Teachers at Reddit, what was the trashiest thing you've seen a parent do? When I taught in Lower West Virginia, a mom showed up to a 5th grade sports event methed out. Wish I could have said this was atypical. The cafeteria, which is used for parent meetings, has tables with fixed bench seating. You have to swing a leg over to sit down. Parent wore a short skirt and was commando. She also got up several times. Full stop. Mother came to a school sports day swigging from a bottle of wine. We always felt desperately sorry for her daughter, because whenever she returned to school following a holiday at home, this was a boarding school, we had to wash all her clothes because they reeked of cigarettes, and this poor little girl was easily the most unhappy child I've ever seen. My mom is a middle school teacher. Just about every day, some parent doesn't come pick up their kids because they literally forgot about them or were passed out drunk on drugs. Then the poor child gets sent to daycare, which is not free. Then the parents complain about the charge. My mom has had to bring random kids home before who barely know the way home. It's really sad. I called a parent about a behavior issue. I must have been on speakerphone, because I heard the kid come home. Parents start screaming at and wailing on the kid, cussing, calling them all sorts of names. I don't even know if the parent remembered I was on the phone. I hung up the phone and went to my principal. Teachers are mandated reporters. Don't hit your kids in front of a teacher. Not a teacher but a college administrator. Parents will call in very frequently when there is an issue with their student's living situation. If they're an asshole, frequent, I quote FERPA to them. Best example, I had to bill a student for around $600 in damages to their room at the end of the year. Mom called me pissed off about this because they had tried to repair the damages poorly. She ended up yelling about this over the phone, and I reminded her that her son was 22 years old and that I could only talk with him about this. Kid calls me back the next day and apologizes for his mom being a bitch to me and asks if I'm able to just bullet his mom when she calls back. It's a weird line of work. This got big. Some vocabulary I've learned for other folks dealing with this. Snauplo parents. I'm not a teacher, but my mother is. It was her birthday and I live 3 hours away from her. I drove to my parents' house unannounced to surprise her for her birthday. She was obviously working as it was school hours, so I drove to the school she works at just as they were finishing. I was heading to the staff room, which is behind the reception area. I was about to announce myself to the receptionist and ask to wait for mum in the staff room, when this angry as duck dad storms in. He was abusing the duck out of the poor receptionist because his daughter got in trouble for being a redhead in class. The principal comes out and tries to defuse the situation, and a minute later my mother comes in on her way to the staff room. It's hectic in there, and then all of a sudden the angry dad headbutts the principal right in the face. My mother screams and angry dad turns and takes one step towards her. Before he got any further, I, without thinking, punched the cunt in the face and his nose disappeared. Police came shortly after and I wasn't charged. It was classified as restraining with reasonable force due to him headbutting. Happy birthday, mum. Wreck their car buying drugs on the way to pick their child up from preschool, and then try to get another parent to cover for them with their estranged husband. This one was pretty funny. A parent brought out a pack of sweets or something and her son asked, "Can I have some?" To which the mother responded, "Where's your ducking manners? How about ducking please?" I facepalmed so hard. When I taught English in China, my good friend and colleague started sleeping with one of the mothers. A woman 15 years his senior and married. I taught her daughter and would often hear stories about how they snuck around behind the husband's back. Not really do. But once, while waiting for parents to arrive to a parents' evening conference, my colleague pointed out one of my students' father sitting in the waiting area. He said, "You see the woman sitting next to him? Well, that's his wife. And the woman sitting on the other side of him? Well, that's her sister. And also his other wife." My cousin is a teacher and she once had a parent come to a parent-teacher conference extremely drunk and right before the meeting tried to pull out a bag of coke and start doing lines. Police were called and so was CPS. The school also had to call 911 once because a parent overdosed in the parking lot while waiting to pick up their kid, and the poor kid was too young to understand why their mom was slumped over in their car. My mum's story. A girl and her parents were being interviewed before starting high school. The primary school this girl went to notified the high school that the girl was autistic. When my mum tried to discuss how they can best cater to the girl's needs, the parents interrupted. The parents sent the kid out of the room. Say to my mum she's not autistic anymore, she grew out of it. The girl is clearly autistic and the school was trying to help. Mum used to be a teacher and this happened to someone she worked with. Child was strangling another child. Teacher wasn't strong enough to pull the child off of the other child, so ended up having to thump the child until he released. Child ended up rather bruised. Parents of the child doing the strangling decided they wanted to try and sue the teacher for hitting their child. Result equals teacher who prevented their son from murdering someone suspended from work until the case gets rejected from court. I had a kid whose aunt was his legal guardian. I told her that he was acting up in class and not doing work, so she threatened to put him back into foster care if he didn't pull his it together. My mom's a teacher and in order to talk to her parent about a child that was struggling due to the school environment, she arranged to meet at the parent's house. Keep in mind this was scheduled in advance with a set time. The dad answered the door 100% naked and tried to have the meeting with him naked on the front porch. My mom doesn't do anything outside the school anymore. Edit. Spelling. I work in a middle school with an elementary school next door. Two girls from my school were arguing all day and told their parents about it when they got out of school. The parents proceeded to call their families up to the elementary school and fought in front of a bunch of kindergartners. Knives and everything. Cops were called. I think some of the parents are still in jail for gun possession parole violations. One of the kids was pulled from our school and put in foster care. Blamed me for their child's suicide attempt. Their kid wasn't even coming to my class. And the suicide attempt was apparently not bad enough to hospitalize her or get her the help she needed. The parent confronted me with this in the fall. By the spring we had a meeting with us, the kid, and my administration. And the parent came around to the fact that their child was essentially gaslighting them and using me as a scapegoat. But blaming someone who had spent maybe 5 hours with their child in a group setting for a suicide attempt was really low. Not a teacher, but my dad once worked as a groundskeeper at a primary school. Worst thing he ever saw was a guy dropping his daughter off to school, and before she went through the gate her dad went through her school bag and took out all of her packed food and left eating it, essentially leaving her with nothing to eat that day. Dad was so angry he said he wanted to knock the guy out right then and therefore leaving his child with no food for the day, but he ended up going straight to the principal to tell them what he witnessed so it could be investigated properly and get the kid help. Not a teacher anymore, but an RN. Kid wakes up from dental surgery. A 4-year-old who needed a root canal, several extractions and fillings. Horrible dentition. Mom dad nowhere to be found post-op. Eventually wander into recovery and from parking lot, reeking of cigarettes and weed, proceed to give the 4-year-old a baby bottle of Mountain Dew. The pediatric dentist took the parents aside into a consult room and yelled lectures them. They told him to mind his own ducking business, scooped up the kid and walked out. Saddest part was I remember the poor kiddo had filthy feet and hair, also reeked of cigarettes. He looked so defeated already. All I could think was that this kid has an uphill battle for a decent life. Being an RN is heartbreaking, not always for the reasons you'd expect. I have to. There is a parent who would walk through our closed campus every single day. As teachers we are supposed to stop her because it's a closed campus. Every single day she would pretend she didn't know the rules. We always knew it was the same parent because she let her younger children who weren't in school yet ride around on their scooters ahead of her. One day she was walking through with a stroller. She was not paying attention and her freaking baby started falling out of the front of the stroller. I saw 4 teachers jump up to help the kid and the mom didn't even acknowledge. The other one happened directly to me during parent-teacher conferences. I was meeting with a mom and her live-in boyfriend about her son. At the end of the conference I asked if they had any questions I could answer for them and he started asking me personal questions and flirting with me. I deflected and told them I had more conferences. But other teachers have told me that parents have hit on them before, so it's probably pretty common. There was a custody dispute and one of the dads took out a loaded gun. We had to cancel recess and call the cops. During a parent-teacher conference, the mom showed up, late, with a tiny dog inside her shirt, with his little head sticking out between her boobs. When we sat down, she took him out and he walked all over the table we were sitting at during the conference. Not a parent, but we had a babysitter who would roll up about 2 feet from the curb in her ancient dented to it gold van, have a preteen in the back slide the door open, and then scream get in. At the tiny 5-year-old she was picking up, the poor girl started crying every time. IDK if this counts, but back in elementary school my friends and I made a pretty successful business making survival bracelets. Since we were the only ones making them, we had a monopoly and sold them for $5 and customs $8. The PTO, Parent Teacher Organization, who are in charge of festivals and organization of other things outside of education, they found out and saw money pit. They basically told us we couldn't sell them anymore unless we gave all the profits to the PTO. By the end we probably made around $500 until we were forced to stop. We even tried doing them through a black market for selling them and keeping the profits. Then the PTO found out and we got suspended, and finally decided to stop. Ducking assholes. I, female, was co-coaching basketball with a newly divorced dad who came to every game with his girlfriend in 2008. She was an overbearing itch. Long story, turns out that youth coach was having an affair with this itch, from where they both work. And that co-coach had told his wife and 3 kids, one of which was on the team, on Christmas Eve that he was leaving for this other woman. IDK what happened? They broke up some time later. Some time after that, the football coach got a parent pregnant. You guessed it. Same itch. After the baby was born, he took another job. I haven't seen him since. Interestingly, the mom's daughter ended up being something like a nationally qualified runner. I'm thinking run faster. Parent witness to an event, not a teacher. My kid's very first day of school, she's 4, 1/2. In the gym hall all the kids and parents are in lines according to class and one by one the teachers come and take them away. Our group was last to go. As we are waiting a guy storms in clearly drunk, starts shouting at a woman in the line, "Why the duck didn't you tell me it was now? I've been looking everywhere etc." He slapped the mum. Another dad in the line pulls drunk dad away and pushes him. He falls down on top of another kid. That kid's mum screams. Drunk starts to run out. Squished kid's dad chases him. He made it out of the gym but then got caught and the it kicked out at him in the school reception. Everyone is freaked out. Kids are crying, then the very happy teacher who is completely unaware comes in. I start googling prices for private schools. Used to work with teenagers who had behavior problems in a special school. One day, a student of mine had a disorganization. He started punching staff and students alike while screaming. It took 5 male teachers to hold him down. The headmaster called his mom so she could pick him up. She had 10 minutes, if longer. We would call the cops. The mother arrived 8 minutes later. A woman in her late 40s with bleach blonde hair wearing a mini skirt and a crop top. She came in yelling and swearing at her son. She picked him up and smacked him at the back of the head while telling him he was a good-for-nothing idiot. The apple does not fall far from the tree. Edit. What I meant by the apple does not fall far from the tree is that I understood from then on why this kid was violent and angry all the time. Often, the parent's behavior is reproduced by the child. My wife is a teacher and had a parent show up to conferences with a joint behind his ear. Weed smoke coming out of the car as they drive the pickup, and I put kids into their car. Threatening a teacher over Thor kids' behavior. Mom slept with her daughter's adult boyfriend. Kicks daughter out of house. Daughter goes to live with dad. Mom tries to say dad molested daughter. Real piece of work. Sitting in a parent-teacher conference with several teachers and at least one administrator present. The mom plucks a hair from her head and starts flossing her teeth with said hair. I used to work in a daycare, and on my first day in a new room with 15-24-month-olds I picked up a little boy and noticed he had dropped something through the neck hole in his onishi. I pulled it out and it was a lighter. When we returned it to the mom and told her where we found it, she laughed and said this kid gets his hands on everything. Poor kid also sounded like a smoker every time he laughed or coughed. I used to work at a high school in Oklahoma. One of my students had a Ku Klux Klan (KKK) profile picture and was promptly questioned by me and the assistant principal. The student claimed that he was actually part of the KKK and that he identified with being a member of the KKK. After we called his parents, they agreed with him, claimed that they were also part of the KKK, then said that our family can have whatever beliefs we want, and if we decide to hate all non-whites, so be it. Duck your black culture school. Our vice principal is a former army sergeant who's built like a tank. He's well liked and an amazing role model in a community where many of our kids don't have a good male role models. On several occasions I've seen mothers step well over the line and make very sexual comments to him directly in front of their kids. I mean in plain sight of their own children and in ways the kids notice. He's always very respectful and often asks another staff member to join him if he sees one of these parents coming to talk. But it's pretty damn trashy when it comes to some of the innuendo I've overheard. These aren't jokes either. They try to get handsy with him too. This isn't even trashy, all this stuff is just sad and abusive. Let's talk about parent email addresses. Oseen Princess, Just a Diamond, Snuggle Sweaty. Really? I have higher standards for your 13-year-old's Quizlet profile. Not a teacher, but there were two students who got into a fight. So they were sitting in the office and called the parents. The parents proceed to show up and they got into a fight too. Who would have guessed? I'm a male elementary teacher. I've had some sketchier parents make weird comments to me. Small rural area and there are some poverty, drug problems, and I can feel some single mothers staring at me because I have a decent job. Obligatory, not a teacher. My mom is a principal though. One of her students was caught shoplifting and subsequently kicked off the cheerleading squad. The mother called the school complaining that she wasn't stealing because she put it back after she was caught. I taught elementary school. I had a third grader who was well behind all the other children in reading skills. He seemed capable of reading, but just never put forth any effort, so I would pull him aside every chance I got and tutor him. It was paying off. He was progressing nicely. Then his mother showed up one afternoon mad as hell because the boy was learning to read. It took me a while to figure out what she was screaming about. It seems she was receiving disability payments because her boy was retarded and incapable of reading. If the caseworker found out the boy could read, the payments would stop. Luckily she caused such a commotion that the assistant principal got involved and she was threatened with arrest. But the poor little boy was scared whenever I tried to teach him. It was my first year teaching at an elementary school in Cuba with my colleague Utempan 123. Dad showed up with his son. This boy was a little shy in class and he was very bright and responsible. He had started the year below grade level and had worked hard to get on track. The dad was smelling strongly of alcohol and animals, weaving and slurring his words. I called the office to have someone come down. We escorted them to the office and had him wait. He ended up getting sick in the trash can. I remember the look of embarrassment, anger and sadness on the son's face. I had other conferences scheduled so I couldn't stay long, but the police had to be called by the administration. The next day the son came in and said he was sorry. I told him I was proud of him and that I was sorry his dad was sick and that I hoped he felt better soon. That seemed to cheer him up a little. I sent home the progress report and great examples of his classwork. I did try to reschedule but it never happened. The worst of it was around the holidays this student would ask if he could come home with me, or he'd mention that he wished I was his mom. I told him that his family would miss him too much and he said no they won't. It broke my heart. He moved schools the following year. Banned. When in court for sexually abusing his special needs nephew, the uncle who had custody said, "It was just the tip." Had a parent challenge me on To Kill a Mockingbird. Why do they need to read this trash? There's no racism anymore. Went on a trip to America for the performing arts. Parent met their kid at the end of the trip for the last 2 days. Parent went out and got hammered both nights and would sneak into her students' rooms at Feast and wake all the kids up to try and party. Tagged along to our final tour dinner with all the kids and got hammered again. Worst person ever. Not myself, but I was in a LTR with a religious studies teacher I went to uni with. One of the modules she had to teach was about Islam. She had a few parents who would send their kids into school with their homework not done and a handwritten note on the homework saying along the lines of, "I have told Bobby not to do this homework because I don't want my child learning about this religion and I will report you in the school if you try to make him." Oh my god, I've worked in behavior units juvies for a few years, so you can imagine the families we get. My fabs took the kids out on the last day of term, pulled into the driveway and one of the kids' mothers is standing there, can of Monster in one hand, cigarette in the other, and wearing a mini skirt and knee-high boots in the middle of winter. One grandparent used to come in wearing a dirty singlet with his belly hanging out, would try to kiss me and called me love, darling, and babe. A kid left grounds without permission so didn't have his phone etc, which we confiscate. Mum came to pick it up, and when the principal tried to engage her in a conversation about her son's behavior she attacked him with her handbag. Not a teacher but leader of a camp for children. We had a child, let's call him Bob, about 8 years old. After 3 days of camp and 11 more to come we found out he already run out of clean socks. Well, we called his mother and she told us that they are from far away and she can't drive there or sent them. After about 10 minutes of talking we came to conclusion that we will wash his dirty socks and she will bring new one on the visiting day. Visiting day is in the middle of the camp and as it came his mother showed up. We were kinda surprised, because she sounded like she did not care over the phone. Visiting day ended and all children were supposed to go to the forest to play games and forget about parents for next 7 days. That is when Bob told us his mother took all of his socks, even those he had on his feet. We called Bob's mother again and she just said it is our problem, so take care of it, and hang up. I called my mother and asked her if she has any socks left from when I was young. She luckily had and drove them to us. Bob left with 10 new pairs socks and never came to our camp again. My kid went to the preschool run by the public school system. One day I saw one of his classmates. Every student was either 3 or 4 moms opened the front passenger door. Kid climbed in, and they drove off with the radio cranked and the little girl dancing on the seat leaning against the dashboard. The back seat was totally empty, not even a car seat. The next day, I offered the lady my other kid's seat. I'd buy another one on the way home. She told me to duck off and drove away with her daughter again standing on the front seat. I let the principal know, and we watched the car drive off into traffic towards the highway L. Day 3, I've called the police, but they'll only come out if I call during the pickup. Great. That'll only take 30 minutes for them to. After mom drives off with daughter dancing on the seat again, I tell the principal I'm reporting the mom to family services if she won't intervene. On day 4, a guy shows up in her car and comes nose to nose with me, without even so much as an introduction. He says if I keep harassing his woman I'll regret it. I tell the principal, nothing she can do. They stopped bringing the kid to school after that. A male parent came in and explained how his son was a mistake. His explanation was that he was just young, dumb and full of cum. When I was a sub, I had to sub a 4th grade class for 2 weeks. The kids had to write a story about their family and read them to the class. The smartest girl in the class wrote about the dog her dad gave her, except every time she mentioned the word dad she said my dad. Sorry, I mean the sperm donor. I asked the office about it. Her mom is crazy AF.